threads that you've learned and move them hopefully a little bit deeper. My aim for you today is that you will be able to name the 3 margas and the 3 components of Kriya Yoga, which comes from the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. Discern the difference between a duo versus the triad model. And begin to identify for yourself, how do you practice these 3 margas? And identify for yourself, does your belief system lean more dual or triad? Because those are worth contemplating. Yeah? Okay. I will leave that up, and I will here be sorry. Pass out. Get another piece of non-tree paper.
Non-tree? What is that?
It's 100% recycled paper.
Thank you. Which is way more
I just came from a tree at one point. What? Okay, are we done with this? You don't necessarily need to write this down. That's just my goals for you. Yeah. Jack. So hopefully this first part is review. What are the 3 margas and where did they come from? Anybody? I know you're brain dead.
totally brain dead.
I forgot.
Okay, you can probably get a little bit of a hint from the paper I passed out.
Oh, it's that
Is it?
No, it's not a different idea.
Taser.
Jnana, Karma, Bhakti, Karma.
No, it has Margo written in the name.
Okay, what's the last one? Bhakti. I guess we are going to have to
Aren't there 4 though? Kriya?
Yeah. So that's where we tie together, right? Where do these margas come from? Hint, hint, it's on the board.
Bhagavad Gita.
This is chapter 2. Right? It's the channel or the method of action. We would call it yoga of action. Jnana Marga? Knowledge.
Are we supposed to, can we do this on our worksheet or?
In the square?
Yeah. And Bhakti.
Yoga devotion or devotion?
Okay, since you're all brain dead, we're gonna have to play a game. Played it before, so you're gonna humor me. Okay, so clear your stuff to the sides. Clear your stuff to the sides. Stand up. I need to get your blood moving. We're gonna move it. Okay, so what is the mudra for karma? Vira mudra. Switch it up. Okay. What is the mudra for jnana? And what is the mudra for bhakti? Karma. Jnana. Bhakti. All right. Move your stuff to the sides. I'm so glad.
Except that the names are.
Yeah, good. Okay, so we're gonna split down the middle. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Perfect. All right, so you guys know the 3 mudras, right? So this is a game. As a group, you're gonna pick a mudra, right, in your mind quietly. And as a group, you're gonna pick which mudra you want to embody quietly. And we're gonna come together. We're gonna say 1, 2, 3, boom. You're gonna present your embodiment of a mudra. And here's how it works, right? If you have a bhakti mudra, you chase the karma mudra. If you have a karma mudra, you have to chase the jnana. And if you present the jnana, and there's a bhakti, right, you get done.
So wait, our group chooses?
Yep, you choose one. So this whole group will have one. So everybody's either going to run this way and try and touch someone on this side before they hit the wall, or you're going to run this way and try and touch somebody before you crash into my camera.
And what if we pick the same?
Then we recall.
Okay.
You clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Bhakti chases karma, karma chases jnana, jnana bhakti. Okay, so come upstairs.
Scissors and use them so bad. Okay, what are we gonna do?
Feel strongly one way or
Go ahead. We're gonna put
Your hands, our feet is in your hands.
right. And by the way, we're gonna hold it against you.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, no, we
Call it in.
You have to just
5.
Okay, that's the one. That's the one.
But we have to get back to it. I need to it's good. Which
One. I'll stay out of the way. If you're getting chased, trying to hit the wall before somebody touches you. This is all about honesty, right? Or if you get to chase, try and grab somebody before they hit the other wall. Bhakti after karma, karma after jnana, jnana after bhakti. All right. 1, 2,
It's so bad. Okay, so we'll do karma.
Okay, you ready? One, two, three.
So all the and the other one is
Okay. Ready? One, two, three. Okay, so what did you guys present? You presented action, and you guys presented. Okay. Great, last one. Guys. Everyone's ready. I'm ready. I can pivot. Either way. Okay. One, two, three. There was confusion on this end. All right. One more chance. Figure it out.
We did take this one.
That's their, I think we should go. Let's do it.
Oh, I see. I should back out. Okay. One, two, three. Oh my God. All right, you want to try one more time? Or are we good? We're good. We're good. Are you a little bit more moving into your brain? A little bit? Yeah. Okay.
We can't lay back down.
Sorry.
Oh, she made this and everything. She made it.
So the very start of the second chapter of the Yoga Sutras, what is presented, this is before we get the whole Ashtanga limbs, this is before we get into, asana and pranayama and dhyana and stuff. Before that kind of suggestion of how to move in these practices, he begins with this introduction, right? Kriya Yoga. Tapas, Svadhyaya,
transforming or no?
Burning.
Catalyst?
Right, that was the how it was presented earlier. It's part of fire, right? There's the Agni, which is the heat of it, the Tejas, which is the light of it, and the Tapas, which is the transformative component of it, from the heat and the burning. What is Svadhyaya? Please, give me a hint. This one is in the 8 limbs of Ashtanga Yoga. What is this? It's part of the Dhyana. Right? This is study of self or scripture. It's a reflection of one's own self. It's understanding oneself from the outer sheath, the body inwards towards the inner self. It is the repetition of sacred mantras and the study of spiritual texts in order to comprehend one's own self. Is Ishvara Pranidhana. Dedication is correct. Dedication, devotion. Right? Ishvara is God, and Pranidhana is laying on, imposing, right? Directing upon. It's profound religious meditation and surrender. It's often, we break this down, this is God and surrender. Surrender of one's body, mind, and soul to God through love for Him. So if we were to lay these on top of the margas, which one would the tapas go? Svadhyaya and Ishvara Pranidhana. Okay, so there's parallels, right? Whatever kind of vantage point or lens we take, there's going to be parallels in these thinkings. Right? Whether it's the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, right, or the Bhagavad Gita, there were different texts around the same time trying to push forward some of these thinkings of, the rishis, the wise ones, and give the path different ways. Right? Any questions about that? But what do we know about
versus Shakti components?
Another way to look at it. Right? In this manner of presentation of these ideas, right? This is what there is. There's Purusha and there's Prakriti. And they're like oil and water, right? Purusha is eternally unchanging. It uses prana and the primordial force of Shakti to descend down into manifestation, right? Into our bodies. But they're not interchangeable, right? This is a movement out of Purusha and back into Prakriti, and the attainment model, I guess, presented in the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, is to then go back up that and get back up to the Purusha, right? That attainment model, moving through those steps to get to Samadhi, to get to the Purusha. It's a dual view. There's this, and there's that. There's God, and there's everything else. Okay? So, on here is the word panentheism. Does anybody know what that is?
Well,
As opposed to pantheism. It's hard to remember the difference.
Pantheism would be this universe and all of reality being God, and panentheism would be God coming into and interacting with this universe with being greater than it.
Yep, exactly. Right? God is greater than the universe. Right? And God is the universe. Right? Another way to kind of make this super clear is there's creator. He's not equal to creation. And this is creator and creation are one and the same. In general, right, this dualism approach, classic yoga, presented by Patanjali, is this mindset. Right? We can't experience that in this body because we're changing all the time. We're identifiable. We're in this prophetic world. We have to transcend that to get up to God. As opposed to the pantheism, right? Now we're moving up into here as we're discussing it. That creator and creation are one and the same. And then the notion of the triad model, because who is one of the main characters of the Bhagavad Gita? Krishna. And who is Krishna?
The creator.
He is the creator in manifest form. Right? He's not the same as Arjuna, but he's no different from Arjuna. Right?
But doesn't Arjuna have him contained within him?
Isn't Arjuna? Yes. Right? They're not one and the same. Krishna is, he's the one, right, who is the God descended into human form to make relationship with the mortals. Okay, so I want to read you something. So from here, right, the goal of this kind of panentheism in the Yoga Sutras, to get to Samadhi, right, the goal is to move from the Prakritic outer world back to a state of Purusha or Samadhi. Right, we heard Jeff say that. It's right in here, that's the whole process. You're getting to the Samadhi, the Mahasamadhi. Okay. When we're looking at the Bhagavad Gita, the goal that Krishna is starting to present, right, is to engage the outer world from a place of knowing Purusha. not that you have to transcend the outer world to know it, but engage the outer world in order to know it. Right? And to engage it from that place of knowing. Okay, so, a couple of things. It is possible to say that pre-Gita thought, right, so this is the time before the Gita was written, had fashioned a niche for the supreme God before there was one, and that when God decided to enter the scene, he found his role waiting to be stepped into. The role was that of a transcendent supreme being who was to a certain extent eminent in, but not identical with, individual souls. Right? He was eminent in the physical creation. Okay? As the supreme being of Krishna, he is indeed the higher Brahman. Oh, here, wait, let me back up just a second. Because this talks about the Samkhya tasks. And since Jeff just talked about it, I'll throw it in here. Right? It's continued thought, based, as he said, that it all comes from the Samkhya kind of vision. That's how we ever descended through. And so that's what it says. The supreme being Krishna is indeed the higher Brahman, the eternal, unborn, undying one, the highest abode and the final stride. He is the resting place of the universe, the unmanifest beyond unmanifest, and the light beyond the darkness. He is the source and the dissolution of the entire universe, the supreme Purusha, the highest of Purushas, and the seed of all creatures. He is a being beyond knowledge and inconceivable, more minute than the minute, right? And so on and so forth. That's literally what it says. So on and so forth, right? And so Krishna provides for all these needs, right? He fills that space. In these lines of thinking, there's Purusha and there's Prakriti. And as we learned from a recent Douglas Brooks, what else is there? There's the extra piece. Right? There's always something more. It's not just this and that. There's always something more. And so in this case, what's more, what that extra piece is, what that plus one is Krishna. And that's what turns this dual model into a triad.
But Krishna and Leela are.
The fact that he's there, it could be probably, talked about as a Leela factor. Right? God descended down as a supreme being into human world existence as Krishna. That would be Leela. Right? So, first let's kind of back up a little bit, hearing all of that, and look, turn your finger to the right. And I want you to kind of come up with, in your own mind, what that came up for you in these categories? How about the opposite of time?
Asanas.
Daily routine, flow of life. Work.
Parenting. Parenting.
Play.
Liberating suffering through action, just generally.
What do you
Could
mean by
apply,
that?
it could apply to everything up there, asana, daily routine, work, parenting, play. That's all forms of liberating suffering through action.
Yeah. Then Svadhyaya, Jnana,
Yoga teacher training.
yoga school.
Biology class.
Reading,
Writing,
So on that, say again?
contemplation,
So on that paper, there's a distinction between apara, which is cultivated out of study and rooted in logic, right, versus para, which is taken from direct experience. Also can be called anubhava.
Parenting.
Right? The experience, you're in it. You're not reading about it. You can read, what to expect when you're expecting your, 11-year-old child a million times, right? And that's going to give you some knowledge, right? That's going to give you a study, but then being in it. I think parenting is a great example, right? And just being aware of the difference, that you're gaining knowledge, you're gaining a study and understanding of self by your very experience.
Yeah.
Right?
Human relationships.
One of my favorite quotes from Christina Sell, and keep training I took of her, right? It says, be a student of your own teaching. Be a student of your own teaching. So you're teaching karma, 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 right? And you're studying your teaching as you're teaching, your experience of it. And that's exactly what that para is referring to. You're in an action and you're observing and noticing and learning and progressing by studying the actions that you're taking. Okay, how about this one?
Mantra.
meditation, being in nature.
Giving to others and community.
fire ceremony?
Puja is any kind of ceremony, any kind of altar-based or morty-based, but it generally, demands certain ritualistic.
So would that include high mass, for example?
Oh, yeah. All those rituals. Or knows which one of them. Right, so what Krishna has in mind here is the larger questions of which actions should be done in a world in which actions must be done. Right? We've introduced that quote before. Right? And he seeks to broaden the issue to all actions. Inner thoughts, inner deeds, intentional, accidental, purposeful, wanted, unwanted, virtually every type of action from every physical, mental, verbal, and psychological standpoint. Right? That's why this can be so broad. If I talk about the difference between ahara and ukara. Okay. Now the next piece here. Bhakti yoga, which is considered one of the three margas. Okay? The Ishvara Pranadana. Can I erase this? Is not one of the three margas or paths of the Bhagavad Gita, not only one of the three margas or paths of the Bhagavad Gita, but the one path that encompasses all, and yet somehow affirms the yoga of action and the yoga of knowledge as facets of that larger agenda, the yoga as bhakti. Okay, so it's this recognition that this is part of the path, but it's what's going to encompass it all. Like Krishna himself, he's like a piece. He's both part of the manifest world, right? And he is the whole of it all at the same time, right? So bhakti yoga is both part of the path, and yet the path in its entirety. A single identifiable piece in the whole. So I wanted to share a couple of quotes, and then we'll kind of pull on that thread a little bit. Krishna's teaching of bhakti related to his teachings of how is Krishna's teaching of bhakti related to his teachings of action and knowledge? This comes from Van Buren. I do not believe that he wishes to present them as equally valid options, or he would have done so. He has given new meaning to, and with it new hope for the ordered life of action according to class and life stage. On the surface, he has advocated the stoicism of acting for its own sake. He has rather ignored the benefits of knowledge, and he has sharply warned against the dangers of blanket renunciation for the sake of release. Now, he supplants the stoicism with an enthusiasm of the believer acting in God's name and for his glorification, and he replaces the salvation-seeking knowledge with that knowledge of God that only bhakti can bring. Right? That salvation-seeking knowledge gets replaced. Right? We're not on this path to free ourselves to some samadhi state. Is his main point here. And yet, we're on a path to experience that samadhi state, that godlike experience. Even in Iyengar's very end, he writes that Lord Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita explains that the supreme ruler abides in the hearts of all beings and guides them, mounting them on wheels of knowledge for spiritual evolution. He says one who has earned this divine knowledge should seek refuge by surrendering all actions as well as himself to the Supreme Spirit or God, so that he journeys from self-realization towards God-realization. That can look like moving into that attainment model of samadhi. That can look like staying on the battlefield and being in your dharma. Yeah? same similar path, and what that would then play out to be in your actions. What are your thoughts on that? Brain dead people after hours and hours together. Any bubbling thoughts?
I thought we were supposed to do that when you asked us to fill out the top part, so I looked for granted. And it reminded me a little bit of Ayurveda. Like, if you eat that super mindfully, it's almost like a devotion, right? And so it's better for yourself, it's better, just that in some sense, if you do everything with that sense of devotion, then devotion is practice. Devotion is doing. Devotion is study, right?
Well, I think if you live your life that way, you receive the benefits of that prosperity. But you receive tremendous blessing. When you are able to surrender, it's a path that it gives tremendous fulfillment. When you find your dharma and your calling.
Which is ironic because it's not like the self-seeking of the yama that,
When you put aside your self-interest and even your self-desires, doesn't mean you're not acting in interest or out of desire, but there's a shift there. And for me, it's the hardest. I can act, I can study, I can feel like I'm doing all the right thing, but in my experience, this bhakti that encompasses all of it is a little bit more challenging. That's where it really hits, the rubber of the road, and there's friction. It's hard to get out of our self-interest to do for something else. How about you guys?
Yeah, that's what I wrote. That was the last thing. I was like, well, that's the one place that seems to be the hardest for me to assimilate it all. And I'm still trying to understand exactly what my relationship with the bigger picture might be. And so therefore my understanding of my relationship with myself is still changing and still growing and still becoming more and more a piece of this process, And so I haven't even figured out if it's bad or good or if there's anything to having interest in the self and what layer deep. I guess it depends on how deep I am in that process before I even know if I don't know. It's still, it's a big contemplation for me.
Which is why I feel like, when we started with the Purusha Arthas, being at a survival level, he was, that was the presentation of the root chakra. It's not like the top chakra, right? It's at our fundamental survival self to be in that cycle of recognition that through figuring out what our dharma is and how to make life that way and to feel the pleasure of that frees us so that we can actually then approach it with more skill, more capacity, and more recognition of how it truly does align for us.
Yeah, I would imagine too along the path once we become more enlightened and therefore enlivened by our understanding of what our dharma might be, it's much easier to touch in on a level of bhakti or devotion because we are ignited by that connection and understanding of the path. And for those of us who are having a harder time fully understanding that, it can be a lot harder to really connect in a full way with devotion, because devotion therefore can be with anything rather than the source.
I also think, though, this might be slightly less true in this particular aspect, but, like, if you act a certain way for long enough, you become that, right?
Right.
So, like, I know there's something to be said for having the self-care that eventually evolves into devotion, not of self, but of, yes.
What if you have to choose? Like, what if you have, what if you have to choose between the greater good and the self?
But in the long
what's
term,
that
maybe
line?
those are.
Is it
They are for your greater good, because if you ignore those things, then it would come back at you, and it would be less in your favor. So even if it seems at first that it's not in your favor, in the long term it would be.
I don't think you understand what I'm saying, but it's okay.
But take it back to, right? He's an individual, he's on the battlefield just like Arjuna.
Yeah.
And he's everything. And so in that thinking, there are those moments where the self-interest is feeding that, or it is recognizing or honoring or devoting yourself to that piece of you that is
Divine.
Well, that's what, and Arjuna has to, I mean, putting in the context of the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna has to choose his dharma versus his self, in a way. He has to, I mean, that's a great sacrifice to kill people you know. I mean, that's an ultimate sacrifice for the greater good. I think it's just my point in that is it gets confused in our society because a lot of the psychology and a lot of what we're taught and what our children are being taught is protection of the self at all costs. And I just think it's something to think about. I don't think it's something we can answer. But I think that's a tension that we always have to face, you know, and is devotion. I mean, to me, devotion is choosing that greater good. If you're living a life of devotion, you are fulfilling your dharma.
But devotion to greater good doesn't exclude yourself.
Yeah.
It's something you can't serve both.
It's more the embodiment of your dharma in form of devotion in that sense, not necessarily choosing one thing or the other. It's just like the full like embodiment of your dharma in that way, and then surrendering your actions from that point on to the higher good, or if that's what you want to call it.
That's the friction. We're an individual manifestation in a world around us, and the world around us is no different from us, and we're, you know, in that triadic and that pantheism model, right? As opposed to the us and them. You either take care of yourself or it's take care of somebody else. That there isn't that we. And this is really pushes against a lot of our thinking. You know, and we're a very individualized culture. Put ourselves first and ahead.
Is that wrong? No, but when you don't, people think you're dumb. And then they do.
Well, I think
Or
there's
you
a
get
lot of
stuck
different.
over
It
it.
depends on where that takes you and how you use that self-power.
Yeah, I mean, it can be totally self-absorption that denies the other, and that goes back further into the us versus them kind of thing. Or it could be, and this is where I lost a lot of time in my thoughts, is it could be, okay, if I take care of myself, and in turn, I'm technically taking care of the world because my standard of well-being is raised. And so therefore, I treat other people with a higher standard of, you know, kindness and so forth. Or is it the other way around? Do I treat people better and then suddenly, oh, I feel better, and you know, and it's just this very.
Okay,
It's
so let's take like a
we're not
context.
saying it's a feedback loop. Yeah.
But let's take a context like about like yours. Now, what if you ran into a situation where there was a child that if you took this child and it would be great cost to yourself, you'd have to sacrifice a lot, you'd have to your sanity, but if you didn't, this child wouldn't have a home. And that black and white, but just take, because sometimes those situations do occur, and you have to make that choice. You have to choose, is it for myself, or should I do it for the greater good? But that may not come back to me ever.
Well, that's what I think with Leela about this idea we talked about. Is this correct? Leela being that this could be, this is really out there. This could be like many planets and universes away. Someone out there is being affected by your choice to do something better for something outside of yourself. And you may not get the immediate return of, I feel like this is better in me because you're in it. But I think it's something I like to catch on to at least. And I think, okay, so today I don't necessarily feel like this decision is really directly harming me, whatever, affecting me. But if I am driven by the idea that this action would be for some higher good, there's a potential that there is some actual reaction happening out there that is, you can't see it, it's affecting so much, it's crazy, you know, but it's
Right.
it's
And
what I
it's
get.
Because as a culture, we're based on instant gratification now. And so if we don't see the results immediately, it's like, why would we even do that? You know?
But
It's
it's
like, why would
further
we
than
eat
that.
healthy?
But it's
You
further
know?
than that. Like, so our context
poorly than to do somebody else's.
Right.
Yes.
Right? If you can, now we try, right? We may be in our dharma to take care of the child, whatever the scenario is, and it may be incredibly challenging and we don't see that we're doing it well, but if it truly is our dharma to do that and we accept that, even with all the challenges of it, even how it's going to ask us to do things that we maybe avoided or whatever, right? If it truly is in that dharma, even as challenging as it may be, then that's the good, right? What's going on for you more so than for that child. Now, if you take it on even though it's not your dharma, you may do it really, really well, but whatever's building up around that is going to have a cyclical effect it's going to affect.
But how do you know?
You
How
don't.
do you really know if it's your dharma or not?
You don't until you really take on that task of asking and looking and recognizing and accepting.
Yeah.
You know, on a biological level, we have the issue of the survival of the fittest. And so if you think about survival of the fittest is always the strongest, most dominant beast, for lack of, or for, you know, to kind of keep it simple. You have this dominant beast that goes out and, yes, eats and takes and uses what he or she needs to ultimately reproduce. But what's happening at the reproduction cycle? You're developing a stronger overall life system that will obviously, in the world of evolution, will evolve into higher and higher, better and better biological units. And so, you know, when you say, look, I may have to make a decision that is very, as a mother, that may be very difficult, you know, maybe a self-interest decision, that, you know, I kind of look at it, it really depends on your point of view, because you may be looking and going, I'm going to make this decision, this is selfish, but it may also be, you know, that's what the survival of the fittest does. And so it will make it a stronger, ultimately, life will be stronger as a result of what you may believe is a very self-interested decision.
Right.
And so the part of the problem is that perception.
Right.
It's very, very difficult sometimes to grasp that what appears to be self-centeredness or to be a decision about the self is actually a decision much broader than that. It's about life itself.
Right. And it's always a choice how you choose to react. Like how Jeff was saying, like the yogi he gains this ability to extend the amount of time where he chooses how to react to something instead of just flipping out when something comes your way. You actually recognize it and then you can behave in a certain way. And so whenever you have these experiences, they're just opportunities and chances to grow and recognize what your true nature actually is, not like what your immediate action would be, you know, in that sense.
Something that stood out that you said was suffering, and that's a really huge word to me because I've been actually meditating a lot on the idea of suffering and how it's something that, for me, that I've adopted as a perspective. That I am suffering. This is suffering. This is suffering. I'm suffering, and I get into that mindset, and I'm finding more and more as I push along that the notion of suffering is something that I can actually look at and I can sit with and I can decipher and split up and change. And it doesn't have to be something so concrete as all these decisions that I make. Like today while we were in class, I was just totally spacing out my thoughts, thinking about how I feel tired and all these big, huge things that I'm like thinking, what am I going to do with my life? What is my dharma? Because as soon as we come on dharma, it's just like, my existential mind has been off the chain. It was like, what is my dharma? Am I going to reach it? Who am I? Like, will I ever get there? You know, in my journaling, it's this whole thing, right? But I'm finding more and more that as I look at it and look at those moments when I'm thinking in those ways, it is an opportunity for perspective shift. And that is, I think, if we're going with survival of the fittest, this is how we will change ourselves as beings. Starting how to release that suffering somehow. I don't know the answer. I still don't know how to love myself as much as I can, but I really can feel that, you know, from you where it's like some decisions that we make are so hard because of how much devotion there is somewhere in us. Somewhere we're pulling on a thread of devotion because of how how do we then, if this, so say that's the path,
Mhm.
that's your dharma, or it's the dharma of the character who's speaking here. You have to give up those things for potential. That's just something to think about.
And there might be something there too that you haven't seen before or never even thought of, like another door was opened or another insight or another.
Like there's still maybe something more. That's what at least I've been trying to draw on, that whatever I've done up until this point, so I tell myself, and I love to like hide it, like, oh, I work at a tattoo shop, so it makes me less cool, or like whatever. I tell myself these things, and then I sit in the seat of, am I ever going to be given any opportunities to move out of this place?
But
So
meanwhile, it's like every experience you have is an opportunity to free yourself of that cyclical nature of karma. It's like something will just keep arising and arising and arising until you see it for what it is, and then it just unravels into an experience. You don't have this attachment and this level of suffering based on the physical and mental faculties that we're so rooted within. It's like you have to see outside of that in some aspect, and then suffering is just like, it just doesn't exist,
I want to,
Hold this. I gotta pull this into closure.
Thank you guys.
But we're all on that. We're all on that field. And whatever the war is, whatever the battle is for us, it's there. In some moments, it's everybody's gonna end up dying, right? And in some moments, it's, do I have cup of coffee this morning or not? Right? And my hope is that these kinds of just explorations and talk help us just recognize we're all in it together, right? We're all in it together, and there's no one way. And none of us really know what our dharma is, but we're always working to find it out.
And there's no perfect world.
There's no perfect world, and devotion is not exclusive to ourselves. It's not a selfless act, and yet it's selfless.
Right.
Right? It's doing something for everything that you included in that picture. And that's tough to do sometimes, because it does feel like you have to pick either or.
Well said.
Right. It's good stuff.
Yes.
Thanks for plowing through a ton of stuff this time around. Our minds will be eased a little bit more next time because we'll just get to do a whole bunch of awesome.
We'll see about the
Thank
mind
God
being
that.
eased.
Just get it into the body.
Maybe you're going to send out an email.
I will send out an email. I'm still working with what the plan is with Noah. You will get a homework assignment, but really it will just be asana based. My hope is to hand you a worksheet so that after every single class you'll spend 15, 20 minutes, however long it takes you to write about your experience in the class and to be in the class as a teacher-trainer mind as opposed to a practitioner mind. Why is he doing that? Wow, that sequence was really, whatever. So you'll get that, and so that will be a lot of where the learning comes from, is how you apply what your experience in the asana class is.
Yeah, I could really notice that today with the sequence that you led, just with that new level of awareness, like seeing how you were kind of developing the class to have like a build up and a flow, and that was just really interesting. Definitely gaining that.
Good,
And
good.
you start to recognize what next when the teacher at a different level.
Yeah.
And then you gotta keep in mind what's happening in everybody's chakras while you're teaching. Oh my God, am I like blowing out one of their chakras? Oh no,
That'd be so challenging for me to visualize like how to do an arm balance without doing it. It'd just be really difficult.
That's why we're all here, right? Okay, so take a comfortable seat. Doesn't matter where you go. Relax your arms, close your eyes. survival is feeling threatened, hit the pinkies. If your emotions are taking over, you want to kind of for that a little bit. Right. You need to bring balance to the fire inside. No. Become receptive. Your heart. It's the wisdom. It's pouring itself into you. Put your middle or your index and thumb together. I'm truly honored by all of your presence, your willingness, your curiosity, your trust. It's amazing what we bring together, who we are, and all that we have going on. May we trust that what we bring into the room can be of tremendous service in ways we can't imagine. Whether it's your silence or your words, whether it's your emotion or your